Hi there, my name is Ziebart. This is Plant-Based for Life. You're watching Quick Cooking Classes. Today we're going to be making a cherry cobbler with Nicecream. So a lovely hot cobbler with cold a la mode, Nicecream style. So please join me in my kitchen. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. So today, as I said, we're making a cherry cobbler with Nicecream. What we're going to do is we're going to prepare the fruit. We're going to prepare what is actually my granola recipe, and that's what we're going to use for our topper. And then we are going to prepare some vanilla and ice cream. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to preheat my oven for the granola. It's a 275 oven. So it's kind of a low and slow kind of a bake. This recipe is very, very simple. It is really tough to find clean granola at the store. I've never even been able to find it clean at farmers markets or anything like that. That's why I absolutely love this recipe. It is hearty, it is crunchy, it is sweet. It's beautiful as a topper for desserts, which we'll be using it for today. It's lovely with some berries and plant milk for breakfast. It is just really, really fantastic. So we start with oats. Now this recipe makes a lot of granola. If you wanted to cut this recipe in half, it would be great. Very, very simple to divide this into. For this recipe, it calls for 8 cups of rolled oats. Okay, there is about 9 cups in here. So you can figure that out either way. A lot of these bags or the cylinders that have the oats in them are 8 or 9 cups. And so you might just be able to use the whole thing or subtract 1 cup from this instead of counting out 8. Now what we want to do is we want to, that's it. It's so easy. Now we want to do is we want to create the sauce that goes on it to make it sweet and sticky and crunchy and all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to set these oats aside. Now, this recipe is called Granola Your Way. So you can add anything you like to it, but I highly recommend that you save any sort of nuts or dried fruit or things like that until the end. If you wanted to add flax, you could add that now. That would be a great time to add in flax. You can add as much as you like. Flax isn't really going to change the recipe that much, and it's a great opportunity to get in your daily flax in a measured amount. We're just going to make it regular old oatmeal this time. So I want to put everything that I need for my granola sauce inside a blender because it's going to get blended out. So I have soaked 2 cups of pitted medjool dates for at least 10 minutes in hot water. We want them to be as soft as possible. We're not going to use this water, so I'm just going to drain it off really quickly and then pop everything in the blender. So this is 2 cups of packed dates, 2 cups packed. And then it's 2 ripe bananas. You can see how this would be easily halved, right? 4 cups of rolled oats, 1 cup of pitted dates, 1 ripe banana, and a little bit of vanilla on your way. So this is 2 bananas and a 1/4 cup of hot water. I have my kettle over here, so I'm just going to grab it and get some more water. Sploosh. And then a teaspoon of vanilla, or what I like to call plug. That's about right. Now, I made a batch of this earlier today, which I will be showing you in a minute, and I used pumpkin spice. So this calls for whichever kind of combination of sweet warming spices you want to add, 2 teaspoons worth total. So this The last batch, I did 2 teaspoons of pumpkin spice. This time, I did a combination of cinnamon, clove, and allspice. Now, cinnamon, you can do more and tolerate more, but clove is very, very strong. So I would recommend not doing more than 1/4, max half teaspoon. So I did half teaspoon of allspice, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and half of a teaspoon of clove, because I'm a rebel like that. So it's going to be a little bit spicy, but really in only a delicious way. Now, if you have a tamper, this is our plunger, depending on what you call it. This is a great opportunity to use it because this is a very chunky mixture. There's a lot of chunks going on here, not so much liquid. So either use your plunger that comes with your blender, or just stop every now and then and scrape down the sides. I'm going to put you on mute so you don't have the jet engine sound. Okay, I am happy with that. Let me just show you what that looks like. We want it nice and smooth. Nice and smooth. You can see how thick that is. So I'm just going to scoop this whole thing into the oats. So what we have is 8 cups of oats, 2 cups of pitted and soaked dates. A spatula is a really good thing to hear. A rubber spatula is a good thing to have here. So that's 2 cups of pitted and soaked dates. I don't want to waste any of this luscious goodness. 2 ripe bananas, 1/4 cup of hot water, a teaspoon of vanilla, and 2 teaspoons, ooh, that's thick. I'm gonna have to scoop that out. 2 teaspoons of any combination of sweet warming spices you want to add. That can include cinnamon, clove, ginger, allspice, pumpkin. That's like a combination of spices, pumpkin or chai. And there are things that we can add to the end, but I highly recommend that you add them after you have baked it. Because if you throw nuts in there now, they're going to get a little bit bitter on you. They may burn, and they'll likely roast all the way through and maybe be a little bitter. So we want to avoid that. And the fruit, if you were to add any sort of additional dried fruit to this, it's going to dry out. And nobody likes dried out, chewy, way too chewy fruit in their granola. But it's a lovely thing to add afterward. So you can add some chopped dates, some raisins, some unsweetened cranberries if you want a little tart hit. Lots of different things we could add. Okay, good enough. So this part requires just a smidge of patience. We need to fold this mixture in. We're just going to, sorry, I want to get that so you can actually see what I'm doing. Fold and fold and fold and fold. So just be patient with me. This just takes a minute. Just keep spinning and stirring, spinning and stirring, spinning and stirring. Now, At some point, you're going to think, oh my gosh, this is not enough. There's not enough sauce to make my granola all covered. But trust me, it is plenty. You just need to have a little patience as you stir. This smells amazing. I can really smell the sweetness of the dates, the banana, the cinnamon, the clove. Really, really, really yummy. Again, a little patience here. Stir, 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 fold and stir. Make sure to scoop up the bottom. Make sure to cut through the middle because there can be some dry patches. And because this isn't a super wet mixture when it's completely combined, we can have pockets where we've missed some dry oats. We don't want that. We want every single oat flake to be slathered in this luscious sauce. Almost there. Patience, patience, patience. And you who know me, I don't have a lot of patience. So this is a really good exercise for me, right? Patience is a virtue. It's one that I work on constantly, or I find ways around it. Either way. Yum. See, there's another dry patch there. Just keep stirring, keep stirring. And you're thinking at this point, oh my gosh, there's not enough, but it will blend. We don't want this to be super sopping wet because the whole point is to have a sweet, light, crunchy granola. And if everything's all wet, then that'll take a lot longer than anybody has patience for. So just make sure to keep stirring until you don't see any more dry spots. Almost there. Okay. So I'm going to call that good. I think I exercised my patience enough for today. So what we want to do is you want to have a nice thin layer, not too thin. So basically you want there, when you put it on your pans, make sure that you have a pan with sides, any sort of baking sheet with sides lined with parchment paper. And then just go ahead and scoop some of this on. But what we don't want is it to be wall-to-wall oats. We want a little bit of spaces in here, or a few spaces. And we kind of want chunks, right? If you like your granola to be very, very like thin, like this, little thin pieces, then you can spread it out even more. I like big chunks like this one here, big chunks. And so that's how I do it. So do as much as looks right. So we want no more than about a ½ inch thick, and we want big chunks. So kind of spread it around so that you have your bottom is completely covered with maybe some little pieces of parchment poking through. But definitely give your chunks of granola some room to grow, some room to breathe, some room to get toasty in the oven. So we have our onion preheated, as I mentioned, at 275. And so we're going to pop this in, and it stays in the oven for 40 minutes. Very good idea, at least once, potentially every 10 minutes or so, to give it a little bit of a stir. But we don't want to stir it. We don't want to flatten these things out. So when you're stirring it, use the edge of your spatula so that you just break it apart, move things around so things are getting toasted properly. Because that's all we're trying to do, just get toastiness everywhere. So you have a lovely crunchy granola when you're done. So I'm going to pop this in the oven. I have another one all ready to go for you. See, I left that one in just a little bit long because we were waiting patiently for to get started here. So this is very crunchy. It is very fragrant. It is absolutely delicious. Now, you can just eat this like granola. Break it out, put it in a little container and take it as a snack. Put it on some berries with some plant milk as a cereal. This is really, really versatile, and I love it so, so much. And you do make a lot of it, but it stores really, really nicely. As soon as it's cool, just put it in an airtight container, and it will stay good for you for a few days. So that's our granola. Our granola is ready to go. Now what we need to do is deal with our fruit. So I have a saucepan here on the stove, and I'm going to go grab my cherries out of the freezer. I'm using frozen cherries. Now, there's a variety of reasons that I'm doing this. You can use fresh. I actually have fresh, but the frozen cherries have their own sort of trapped fluid. And as things freeze, they start to break down just a little bit. And so when we're talking about frozen fruit, typically it is just slightly more nutritious than the fresh stuff, because fresh stuff tends to, especially in large grocery stores, the fresh stuff tends to be picked very early. And so what does that mean? It hasn't been allowed to ripen to its full potential. But when things are frozen, they have been allowed to ripen. So these fruits, these berries, these cherries have been allowed to ripen completely, and then they've been frozen. And so they are really, really at their peak, and kind of they stayed there. Yeah, see, that's what thank you, Teresa. Teresa said that the cherries will cook down to a nice syrup. That's what I love about the frozen ones. As they're simmering, as they're cooking, these are the cherries I'm using today. As they're cooking, they release their juices and they start to break down a little bit, and that juice turns into the syrup. And so I'm going to go ahead and plunk a couple of these bags in this pot right here, and I will show you what I made. So you can do this on hot, very high, if you stay near your pan. If you're going to walk away from it, put it on simmer until you can come back and give it the attention that it deserves. So you don't really need to do anything except for stir it around. You might want to poke at it a little bit to assist in the breakdown of the fruit. I think 2 bags ought to do it. So I just use a wooden spoon. You can hear it sizzling a little bit. What you can do to get things started is just give it a little splash of water. I'm talking like a tablespoon or 2 max. Just a little splash to get things going. Now, with these cherries, because they are nice, fat, juicy cherries, I simmered them for about 20 minutes. Smaller kinds of fruit, like if you did wild blueberries, it would just take a few minutes. But because these are larger, it will likely take much longer in order to get them to break down. So for you today, I have already got some ready to go. So I made these earlier today, and you can see thick, luscious, syrupy goodness. See how much that thickened, that juice from the cherries? Now you can see they've broken down a little bit, but there's still plenty of luscious bites. And I did occasionally poke to assist in them releasing their juices. But I do want some cherry bites in there. So they're not completely broken down. Like I wouldn't take a masher to it or anything like that, unless you really wanted, unless you wanted to do that. It's entirely up to you. So luscious, syrupy goodness. All right. So what do we do then? One of the things I will say is you can add to these frozen berries or whatever kind of frozen fruit you like. You can use fresh too, as I said, just frozen just seems to break down nicer and release more of its juice. You can add any sort of warming spices if you like. You can add a little bit of sweetener. So what I've done is I've added, we always keep some date syrup made in the fridge. So all this is a handful of dates that have been pitted and destemmed, of course, soaked in some hot water, just enough to cover. And then I throw the whole thing in my little mini blender, and voila, you have date syrup. It really is so easy, and you know exactly what's in it. When you buy it from the store, we just are never quite sure if they've taken anything away. So I love to make my own, and you can add a tablespoon or 2 of this to it. I wouldn't add any more than a tablespoon or 2 because it is very sweet, and we want a little bit of tartness left to our fruit. So I am going to add just a little bit to these simmering cherries here. Give it a little bit of a stir. Now I'm not going to have enough attention to pay to these cherries. So I'm actually going to turn them down so that I can concentrate on other things. You can do it either way, really. You turn it down, obviously that's going to take longer. Just watch it, give it a little stir every now and then, and make sure that things are going well. So I have a little dish, and all I'm going to do is layer my cherries on the bottom of this dish. This recipe is so simple that I feel kind of silly even sharing it with you, but it's worth it. Trust me. It's worth it to take the time to make this stuff because it is so delicious and so healthy. You can serve this to your loved ones and to yourself completely guilt-free. How amazing is that? So you can see I have a nice layer of cherries on the bottom. You want to make sure that there's enough to have at least an inch layer of fruit. And as I said, it can be any kind of fruit you like: blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, mixed berries. You know how you can get those mixed berries frozen? Stone fruit, any kind of stone fruit, apricot, peaches. There are a million things that you can do. One of the things that I thought of as I was making this recipe is I thought about adding some cocoa to my granola and then doing a caramel base. Now, if you have seen me make my caramel chewy candies, that would be a lovely thing to add underneath this. That would be extremely sweet. But if you add some lovely vanilla Nicecream on top, luscious, really, really good. So all I'm going to do is take my prepared granola, see if it's cool enough for me to handle. It is. And I am just going to sprinkle it all over the top of this. You want a nice layer so that it covers all of the berries. You can break it up a little bit more if it's too chunky for you, but we like to have the chunks because they will stay nice and crunchy as this bakes in the oven. Now, you don't need to bake it very long. Actually, you don't need to bake it at all. But the baking it gives it a chance to marry, so the underside of the granola will get soft and soak up some of that cherry juice, and the top will stay nice and crunchy. It also gives you the opportunity to add more toppings if you like. So one of the things that I have on hand over here, actually I have two things. I have some chopped, like diced dates, and I have some finely diced walnut pieces. Now, I'm not going to add them now. Again, remember, we don't want to add these things too early in the baking process, or else they will get dried out and maybe even bitter, and that's not what we want.
This looks fabulous. Yum, yum, yum.
Thank you, Dee. Yes, I'm so excited about this. So we have a little bit of cherry peeking through. I'm actually really happy with the way that looks. I think it's really, really pretty. So one of the things I did to the one I'm going to show you in a minute that's already finished is I scooped a little bit of date syrup and I just went loop, 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 loop all over it. That's something that you can do. I'm going to throw this in the oven and bake it for a while. And so what is a while? So as I said, you can leave it just like this. It's going, if you just let it sit, it's going to actually soak up the cherry juice underneath, and the top is going to stay crunchy. But we also want it to be hot so that when we scoop our Nicecream on top of it, it gets all melty. And so I'm going to pop this in the oven for 20 minutes or so. And then for the last few minutes, I'm going to add my toppings, which are my diced dates. See, diced dates and diced walnuts, walnut pieces. I want to do that at the very end, just a few minutes before it's finished baking. So I'm going to throw this in the oven, and we're going to make some Nicecream because I don't want to pull out the other cobbler until we're ready to put our Nicecream on top. We are full of granola in this house right now, which is fantastic. Give my cherries a little stir while I'm sitting here. Okay, I just want to show you this really quickly. So you can see it's already starting to thicken. It's not quite thick enough yet, still a little bit runny, but you can see that juice in there is already starting to get a little bit of a glaze. It's starting to coat the spoon already. So another 5-10 minutes, that should be pretty well done. So let's go ahead and make our Nicecream. So all we need is our food processor. So when I baked it, I actually changed the temperature to 375 degrees. This low and slow 275 is for the granola. So I did up it to 350 and no more than 20 minutes or so, because you don't want it to, the granola to overcook, but you want it just to get warm and meld those flavors. Anytime you add lemon or lemon rind, you are going to brighten all of your flavors. Lemon has this beautiful quality. A lot of people will actually add lemon to their date syrup just to really brighten the flavor. So that's an excellent suggestion. Who suggested that? Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for that suggestion. That's an excellent suggestion. Okay, so when it comes to Nicecream, you have, sorry, I have granola all over the place. You have two options. You can either just blend your bananas after you've let them sit for a minute outside of the freezer. I have not done that. So I have a 1/4 cup of unsweetened plant milk standing by so that things will blend properly. If you leave them out of the freezer for a minute or two, then that should be plenty soft enough to blend without adding any liquid. I am also going to add a little bit of vanilla again, because I love the vanilla with a Nicecream. So here are my gorgeous little babies. Aren't they beautiful? You really want these bananas to be very, very ripe. Brown spots minimum, you know, mostly brown if you can get them before they start to turn too far. So we don't want rotten bananas, but we do want very, very ripe, sweet bananas. And typically at a time, I do 2 or 3 bananas max, because if you overfill this container, then it won't blend properly. So I'm just gonna drop in approximately 2 or 3 bananas. It's really lovely to do it this way. I have frozen bananas in pretty much every way you can imagine, including with the peel. I do not recommend that method. It is painful and messy and so many not good things. I love this method. I just plunk them on a cookie sheet or any kind of flat tray with, you don't have to use parchment paper here because it's not cooking. You can use wax paper or anything else. This just helps it to come up from the pan. Otherwise it can be a little bit tricky to get these frozen banana pieces off. But once they're frozen, you can just toss this whole thing in any kind of container or in a couple of different containers, because that's a lot of banana. Cherries are looking really, really good. Okay. Now I am going to give you just a couple of tips for Nicecream. Bananas are a little bit naturally starchy. And so, you know, when you make mashed potatoes, if you use a blender or, you know, a hand mixer, you can over blend them. The same is true for frozen bananas. So to get the best texture, you want to mix it just until it is mixed and no more. Blending it more will create a different kind of texture.
Maureen asked, how much vanilla do you put in?
About a teaspoon. See, I don't measure it. Thank you, Maureen. Okay, so I am going to get this started. I'm going to mute you so that you aren't blasted by the noise. I'm going to get this going, put it on high. I'm going to add my 1/4 cup of plant milk and my little glug of vanilla, and just, that's it. That's the whole thing. So I just want to show you one thing. So you can see here that it's almost like those Dippin' Dots. You've seen those Dippin' Dots, how it's kind of dry. That is why we need to add the plant milk. If you'd let it sit for a minute, or if I had, let it sit for a minute on the counter before blending it, then it would have been soft enough to not create these dry chunks. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on mute again and continue to blend. Okay, you saw that I stopped it as soon as it was blended. Look at that. So this is the consistency of soft serve. Luscious, luscious. Okay, so let's go ahead and plate this up. That was it. I know, right? It was so fast and easy. Let me pull out my other cobbler that I already made for you guys. And I'm going to turn those cherries off. So you can see I put a little dollops of the date syrup on there, but this is an opportunity to add those chunks of dates or the walnuts right before you take it out. Like no more than a few minutes. Would be nice to get them warm and a little toasty, but not overly cooked. Okay, so let's go ahead and plate this up. Oh, that granola is so crunchy. You can feel it with a spoon. Look at all that cherry goodness in there. Oh my goodness. And it's going to be very hot. And so it's going to melt that Nicecream beautifully. It's not pretty, but it's going to be delicious. So let me go ahead and throw, I think it needs 2 scoops. Definitely 2 scoops of Nicecream on there. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
And I do believe that Trent will be eating this. So I want to thank you for watching Quick Cooking Classes. This has been Cherry Cobbler with vanilla Nicecream.